Friends, I wanted to kind of end this weekend by reciting some very important words that were written and preached by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I think that it is a poignant reminder of the struggle of the past, but how the past looks very much like the present. That we are in a troubled world, a troubled nation, but that collectively together, that we can fight for justice and put a nail in the coffin of white nationalism and white supremacy and systematic oppression. We can find our common voice, both in terms of all of us, African, American, queer, Muslim, white, Anglo-Saxon, German ancestry, Italian ancestry, Irish ancestry. We can all find a common voice, stand and march together for things like economical sustainability, against racial injustice, against the supremacy and the violence that we saw in Virginia this past weekend. So here we have the words of Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm only sharing certain parts of it. Thank you very kindly, my friends. As I listened to Ralph Abernathy and his eloquent and generous introduction, and then I thought to myself, I wondered what he was talking about. It's always good to have your closest friends and associates to say something good about you. And Ralph Abernathy is the best friend that I have ever had in the world. I am delighted to see each of you here tonight in spite of the storm warning. For you reveal that you are determined to go on anyhow. Something is happening here in Memphis. Something is happening in our world. And you know, if I was standing at the beginning of time with the possibility of taking a kind of general panoramic view of the whole human history up to now, the Almighty said to me, Martin Luther King, which age would you like to live in? I would take my mental flight by Egypt and I would watch God's children in their magnificent trek from the dark dungeons of Egypt through, or rather across the Red Sea, through the wilderness on toward the Promised Land. And in spite of its magnificence, I wouldn't stop there. I would move on by Greece and take my mind to Mount Olympus, and I would see Plato and Aristotle, but I wouldn't stop there. And I would go on even to the great heyday of the Roman Empire, and I would see developments around there through various empires and leaders, but I wouldn't stop there. And I would even come up to the day of the Renaissance and get a quick picture of all that the Renaissance did for the cultural life of man and woman, but I wouldn't stop there. I would even go by the way that the man for whom I am named after, and I would watch Martin Luther as he tacked his 95 Thesis on the door of the church of Wittenberg, and I wouldn't stop there. I would come on up even to 1863 and watch a vacillating president by the name of Abraham Lincoln finally come to the conclusion that he had to sign the Emancipation Proclamation, but I wouldn't stop there. I would even come up to the early 30s and see a man grappling with the problem of bankruptcy of this nation and come with an eloquent cry that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. But I wouldn't stop there. Strangely enough, I would turn to the Almighty. I'd say, if you allow me to live just a few more years in the second half of the 20th century, I would be happy. That's a strange statement to make, because the world is all messed up. The nation is sick, and it needs a doctor. Trouble is in the land, and confusion all around the land. That's a strange statement, but I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. And I can see God working in this period. It's a strange way of responding. Something is happening in our world. The masses of people are rising up, and whatever they are assembled today, whether they are in Johannesburg or South Africa or Nairobi or Kenya or Ghana or New York City or Atlanta or Mississippi or Palestine or California, the people are rising up and demanding justice. God sent us by here to say to you that you're not treating his children right. We come by here to ask you to make the first item on your agenda for fair treatment, where God's children are concerned now. For if you are not prepared to do that, we have an agenda that we must follow. And our agenda calls for withdrawing economic support. Right, brothers and sisters? Imagine a great deal to try to determine why the priest and the Levite didn't stop. Times when they say that they were busy going to a church meeting. They had to get down to Jerusalem so that they wouldn't be late for their meeting. At other times, we would speculate that there was a religious law that one was engaged in a religious ceremonies. It was not to touch a human body 24 hours before the ceremony. And every now and then we would begin to wonder, rather maybe they were not going down to Jerusalem or down to Jericho, rather to organize a Jericho Road Improvements Association. That's a possibility. Maybe they felt that it was better to deal with the problem from the casual route rather than to get bogged down with an individual effort. But I'm going to tell you what my imagination tells you. It is possible that those men were afraid. You see, the Jericho Road is a dangerous road. I remember when Mrs. King and I were first in Jerusalem. We rented a car and drove from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and as soon as we got on the road, I said to my wife, I see why Jesus used this as a setting for his parable. For its winding and meandering road, it really is conducive for ambushing. For you start out in Jerusalem, which is about 12,000 miles, or rather 12,000 above sea level. And by the time you would get down to Jericho, and 15 or 20 minutes later, you would be about 2,200 feet below sea level. That's a dangerous road. For in the days of Jesus, it came to be known as the Bloody Pass. And you know, it is possible that the priest and the Levite looked over that man on the ground and wondered if the robbers were still around, or if it's possible that they felt that the road on the ground was merely faking and he was acting like he had been robbed and hurt in order to seize them over there, to lure them for quick and easy seizure. And so the first question that the priest asked, the first question that the Levite asked was, if I stopped to help this man, what would happen to me? But then the Good Samaritan came by and he reversed the question. And if I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to me? That's the question before you tonight. Not if I stop to help the sanitation worker. Not if I stop to help Black Lives Matter. Not if I stop to help our queer brothers and sisters. But what would it be if I don't stop to help them? The question is not if I stop this man in need, what would happen to me? The question is, if I do not stop to help, what will happen to them? That is the question. Let us rise up tonight with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination. And let us move on in these days of challenge, to make America what it ought to be. For we have an opportunity to make America a better nation. And I want to thank God once more for allowing me to be here. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter what will happen to me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go to the mountaintop, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land, and I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get there to the promised land. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about what any man will say. I'm not fearing what any man will do. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.